Hello and welcome to the first video of 2024. My name is Nathan and today we are doing our third class overview on the Bard. Now, here is our agenda for this video. I'm going to kind of talk about the class overview and role of the Bard class. And then I'll go through all the features of the class, beginning at level 1, going all the way to level 20. Importantly, in this series, we're only talking about the features of the core class, and while I will go over briefly kind of what all the subclasses do, I'm not going to go into detail on their features, and they won't be accounted for in my final ratings of the class. Then I'll talk a little bit about multiclassing the Bard, and finally, I will summarize and kind of rate the Bard in different categories important to play. So let us get started. So class overview and role. If I was going to summarize what the Bard does in a few short words, well, first, they are a charisma-based known spellcaster. So if you're a known caster, that means you have a limited selection of spells. You know all your spells. They're always prepared. You don't have to worry about that. And you can change out spells every time you level up. Now, bards among all the known casters get to learn the most spells, and so there is some flexibility there. Now, their role, again, in a single sentence, they are what I would call a backline support and controller. Importantly, they're also a jack of all trades and master of some in terms of skills. So bards ideally want to be supporting their party, controlling enemies, and using their utilities and ability outside of combat. So, class features at level 1, what do bards get? Well, bards have a d8 hit dice. This is pretty standard for most casters, and is kind of what I would consider the typical hit dice of the game. This is the second smallest hit dice, so your bard is not going to be particularly healthy. As for their proficiencies, they only get proficiency with light armor, so no medium armor, no shields. As for weapons, you get proficiency with all simple weapons, the hand crossbow, the long sword, the rapier, and the short sword. As for tools, you get proficiency with any 3 musical instruments of your choice. And as for their saves, they get proficiency in dexterity and charisma saves. And on their skills, you get to pick any 3 skills to be proficient in. Also, at level 1, they get their core feature, their bardic inspiration. So what this does is a bonus action. You can give an ally inspiration. It lasts for 10 minutes, and they can use it on like a skill check, and they get to roll it's a skill check or an attack roll or a saving throw, I believe. Let me verify that. Yeah, so skill check, attack roll, or saving throw, and you can add it to this d20 roll, but after you see the result, but before the DM says whether it hits or misses. And you can use this an amount of times per long rest equal to your charisma modifier. Now, importantly, this is one of the things that makes bards really good at support. Importantly, you can't use the bardic inspiration on yourself. So this is something you can use to bump allies for key attacks in combat or maybe skill checks outside of combat. Bards also get their spell casting at first level. They get 2 first level spell slots as they are a full caster. They get 2 cantrips. Their casting focus is an instrument. They get to know 4 spells. They are charisma-based caster, and they have the ritual caster feat. So any spell they have known that has the ritual tag, they can cast as a ritual. Now, generally speaking, the Bard spell list, in terms of their cantrips, almost all of them are utility. They do have a unique one in Vicious Mockery, but there's nothing that's a standout in terms of damage. And most of their spells are going to be either utility or control/support focused. And those that do damage are typically pretty mediocre. And so bards, because of their nature of their spell list, don't get to do much damage with that. Now, because of their armor proficiencies, most pure bard builds are going to look to have a high charisma because that's their casting stat, and then probably your next highest stat is going to be dexterity, and then maybe constitution. And generally speaking, bards' biggest weaknesses are going to be in that defensive area. Now, at level 2, bards get Jack of all trades, and this is a really cool feature. What this does is any ability check that you're not proficient in, you get to add half your proficiency bonus to. This includes initiative rolls. So bards, by nature of this, are better at skills than anybody else because they just have this inherently that makes them better at skills even that they're not proficient in. It rounds down your proficiency bonus, so for a long time this is just going to be a +1, but that's better than nothing. They also get Song of Rest here. And what this does is, if you're able to play music during a short rest, any ally who recovers hit points during that short rest, whether it's from a spell or probably spending their hit dice, they get to roll a d6 and add it to that total. They also get the Magical Inspiration feature here. This is something that was added out of Tasha's, and what this does is, if an ally has your Bardic Inspiration dice, it lets them, they can all, in addition to the attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, they can also add it to the damage of a spell they cast or the healing of a spell that they cast. And this is just another, again, nice thing that gives that a little more usefulness in combat. They're a second level caster here, so they get to learn another spell, and they get 3 first level spell slots. At level 3, bards get expertise in 2 skills of their choice that they're already proficient in. That lets them double their proficiency bonus, and that's just a huge thing towards being that master of skills. They are a 3rd level full caster, learning their 6th spell here and getting 2nd level spells. And again, the bard's spell list is mainly geared towards support and or control. While there are a few spells that deal damage, most of them that do damage are pretty mediocre overall. Bards also get their Bard College, their subclass here, and they get their core subclass feature. And typically, these, like all the subclass features, the core thing that they'll give you is some kind of additional way to use your Bardic Inspiration dice. So here are all of the Bard subclasses we have from official content. From the player's handbook, we have the Lore Bard and the Valor Bard. The Lore Bard gets a whole bunch of extra skill proficiencies and kind of specializes in knowing things. The Valor Bard is kind of like, they get some armor and weapon proficiencies and eventually get to make an extra attack. From Xanathars, we got the Glamour Bard, the Swords Bard, and the Whispers Bard. The Glamour Bard is, focusing on enthralling creatures with your beauty. The Swords Bard is kind of like a better Valor Bard that, again, focuses more on that martial combat and gets some more weapon proficiencies to go with that. And the Whispers Bard is focused on kind of manipulating and fear and that kind of thing, and has almost like a roguelike sneak attack thing you can do with your Bardic Inspiration. From Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, we got the Creation and Eloquence Bards. Creation Bard can do all sorts of interesting things with singing things into existence, basically. And the Eloquence Bard is really good at using Bardic Inspiration and as well as convincing people. And then from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, we got the Spirits Bard, which kind of consults spirits and that kind of thing. Interesting, but their effects are random and kind of hard to control. At level 4, bards get their first ability score increase or feat, and they follow the normal feat progression. So they'll get one at 4, 8, 12, 16, and 19 for a total of 5. They get to learn a 3rd cantrip here, and you get to learn an additional spell at this level as well. At level 5, bards their Bardic Inspiration dice increases from a d6 to a d8, which is nice. But most importantly, they get the Font of Inspiration feature. And what this does is you get all of your Bardic Inspiration dice back on a short rest. And this is a pretty huge bump. If you were doing what is considered the standard 2 short rests and per long rest type thing, you would have just now tripled the amount of Bardic Inspiration dice that you could use. Because before it was just, your charisma per long rest. But now you get that, you get to set it on a short rest and reset it on the second short rest, so you now get triple the amount of Bardic Inspiration dice. And this means that you can be much more free about handing those out or using those with your subclass abilities, and this is honestly a huge level. Bards also get 3rd level spells here and learn an 8th spell, and 3rd level spells in general are very, very powerful, but the Bard spell list still kind of has its limitations. At level 6, bards get the Counter Charm feature, and this is honestly a pretty poor feature. There are some situational uses outside of combat, but what this does is as an action, you can start playing a performance that lasts until the end of your next turn, and during that time, you and any friendly creatures within 30 feet of you have advantage on saving throws against being frightened or charmed. And if you get silenced or you're incapacitated or you voluntarily end it early, it'll end before then. Again, situationally useful, but in combat, you usually have a lot better things to do with your action than this. But bards get their first, their second bard college feature here at level 6. And this is usually goes toward further defining their subclass. And these 6th level features are typically very powerful. Bards unique, not unique among full casters, but they have a couple subclasses that even get extra attack here. And having that ability while being a full caster is typically very powerful. And again, just about all the bard subclasses get really powerful features here. At level 7, bards just get 4th level spells and learn their 10th spell. Not a huge deal, but the 4th level spells are potentially very powerful. Level 8, bards get their second ability score increase or feat following that normal schedule, and they're following the normal schedule for a full caster, getting their second 4th level spell slot here. At level 9, Bard's Song of Rest improves from a D6 to a D8. Again, this is a pretty minor bump. The biggest thing that you get here is the 5th level spells and slots. Now, level 10. This is a huge level for bards. The Bardic Inspiration increases to a D10, which is fantastic. You also get 2 additional skill expertises, as well as you get the Magical Secrets feature. So what this does is, instead of learning your normal spell off the Bard list here, you get to learn 2 spells from any class list that can be 5th level or lower at this point, because they have to be levels that you have slots for. If you later retrain these, they have to be spells from the Bard list, so be wise on your selections with your Magical Secrets. But this is where bards get a chance to take the best spells from any class in the game. And this is honestly an incredible feature. And it's unfortunately something that they get pretty late. And man, this is where bards can potentially start to swing back on the damage side or further improve their support or control on utility and kind of that kind of thing with the right selections. I'm not going to dive super deep into kind of what you should pick, but things like Spirit Guardians are super popular, or things like Counterspell and that kind of thing. And yeah, this is something that is an incredible feature, and if you get to play a bard at a high level, this is something that's going to be really fun. At level 11, they just get their first 6th level spell slot and get to learn a spell of 6th level or lower. Those spells are good, but nothing super powerful there. I mean, they've got things like Mass Suggestion, which is incredible, but again, pretty standard. At level 12, bards get their 3rd ability score increase or feat, and unfortunately, they don't get to learn any new spells here, and that's going to be something that happens a little bit here as we get toward the later levels, and honestly, it kind of sucks a little bit. At level 13, bards get 7th level spells and slots, and Song of Rest improves from a D8 to a D10. This is, again, an average bump of about 1 healing, and not super significant. At level 14, however, bards get their college capstone feature. The power level of these varies. Sometimes they're incredibly powerful, sometimes they're kind of eh. So mileage varies a little bit there. But the best thing, in my opinion, that bards get at level 14 is their second batch of Magical Secrets. At this level, instead of learning a single spell off the bard list, again, you get to learn 2 spells from any class list. So you could, for example, pick up Simulacrum out of Wizard because it's a 7th level or lower spell. So again, really fun, really powerful, and if you get to play a bard at high levels, this is something that makes them potentially one of the best casters in the game if you know what kind of spells are available, because you can pick anything. At level 15, the Bardic Inspiration gets its final bump up to a D12, and bards are now, a 15th level full caster, which means 8th level spells and slots, and they can learn that additional spell here. At level 16, bards get their 4th and second to last ability score increase or feat, and you don't get to learn any new spells, which is kind of sucky, but again, it's okay. Because at level 17, we are now, we get to have that 9th level spell slot, and while the bard 9th level spells aren't fantastic, we will fix that next level, and our Song of Rest gets its final improvement to a D12 here. At level 18, this is, again, in my opinion, a huge power spike for Bard because you get your last round of Magical Secrets. Instead of learning any new Bard spells at this level, you get to learn 2 spells from any class lists in the game that can be 9th level or lower. So anything in the game is available to you, and you can pick up Wish here. And it's important to mention that cantrips are also eligible picks for Magical Secrets. And there might be some, motivation to pick up something like Eldritch Blast, but unfortunately you can't get the invocations for it. But if there is a particular cantrip that you want, I would definitely get that way sooner than, here. At level 19, bards get their second to last ability. Well, they get their final ability score increase on that regular schedule, and we don't get to learn any new spells here. Of course, retraining is available and has been available for every level. And finally, at level 20, bards get their capstone, their class capstone, which is called Superior Inspiration. What this does is it says when you roll initiative and don't have any uses of bardic inspiration remaining, you get one back. And honestly, and as far as class capstones go, I don't think this one is very good. You're at most tables, you'll probably get to short rest after every combat. And if you're not, you'll probably be able to know that in advance. And honestly, this is something that I don't think I would miss, especially because, we didn't get any new spells last level. We didn't get any new spells this level. So, kind of a capstone as far as things go. So, let's talk about multiclassing the Bard. So, the minimum stat requirement to multiclass into Bard or multiclass out of Bard is to have 13 Charisma, and this should be pretty easy to get. As far as the proficiencies you get, if you get a level in Bard and it's not your first class, you get proficiency in light armor, any skill, and one musical instrument. Now, in my opinion, Bard goes best with Paladin, Sorcerer, or Warlock. And these are all charisma-focused classes and really can kind of lean in to what the Bard does. You can potentially even stack more than one of those on a character. Something like a Hexblade dip is a classic thing to do on a bard that wants to make attacks, so they can make attacks with their charisma and become single attribute dependent. It can also work pretty well with cleric, fighter, or rogue. Fighter and rogue are pretty straightforward because they have a dexterity requirement, and bards naturally are probably going to have a pretty high dex, probably 14 or higher. And the rogue, even gives you those extra skill expertises that can make for a very powerful character in terms of skills. Now, the reason I put cleric on there, so the two biggest weaknesses of the bard primarily come in their defenses. If a bard is going to multi-class, it's probably going to be to fortify their defense and or give them more offense. So multi-classing into a class like Cleric or Fighter or Paladin or even Hexblade Warlock that can give you proficiency with armor and shields is a huge deal for a bard who wants to increase their survivability. In the same way, getting something like Sorcerer to give you access to abjuration spells like Shield and Absorb Elements and Silvery Barb. Actually, Silvery Barbs is actually on the bard spell list, so you can have that if it's allowed. But getting access to those, if you can get armor and defensive abjuration spells, you can really make your bard a lot more survivable. And some of the other classes here can combine with the bard pretty well to fortify that kind of offense. And you can actually make a really well-rounded character with multi-classing a bard. That said, if you're going to multi-class bard, in my opinion, bard works best as the main class. Now, with some of these dips, you might want to take a level or two or start at level 1 in a different class and then multi-class into bard afterward. Like for Paladin, for example, that would give you the heavy armor. But if you're going to do a bard character, because of the strength of the bard's scaling and the subclass features and the magical seekers and that kind of thing, in my opinion, again, bard should be your main class. So let's kind of summarize and talk about my ratings for the bard class as a whole. So offense, the core bard class, I give them a 1 star. This is the lowest I can give. This is a rating about their damage dealing, and the bard class as a whole, if you just look at the core class, is not good at dealing damage. Their cantrips are very weak. Their spells don't have any particular damage standouts unless you take damage spells with your magical secrets. And you're probably not going to be blasting with those, and you don't really have many like low-level spells that are efficient to use and that kind of thing. So while you can make your bard a damage dealer, and a lot of the subclasses help with this, the core class doesn't really have anything to offer in terms of damage dealing. Likewise, with their defense, I give them a 1 out of 5 here. This is because they have a very small hit dice. They have very poor armor proficiency, so your AC is going to be very small. They don't have any kind of defensive spells other than Silvery Barbs, if it's even allowed. And they're just going to be overall very squishy. And again, this is something that bards can solve relatively easily with the right multiclassing, and is something that if you want to optimize your bard, I would highly recommend doing, as the core class is very poor defensively. Now, control. I give the bard a 4 out of 5 here. They have some access to some really good control spells and things that can potentially end encounters, usually in peaceful ways. And with the magical secrets, you can also potentially get even better things. Some of the subclasses will help with this even more, but their core spells are pretty darn good at controlling the battlefield. Now, support. This is kind of their ability to help their allies, whether it's in or out of combat, and I give the Bard a 5 out of 5 here. They have Bardic Inspiration, which is probably the best core class feature for support in the game. They've got access to healing spells, and pretty good ones at that. They also have access to spells like Enhance Ability and kind of all the general out of combat utility that you could possibly want. And so bards are really, really good at this, and this is one of their core roles. Now, skills. This is their ability to use their skills and that kind of thing out of combat. And again, bards get a 5 out of 5 here. They get to pick any spells. They get to pick any 3 skills at character creation. They get expertise in potentially 4 skills. They've got Jack of all trades for any skills that are not proficient in. And they also have spells like Enhance Ability on their spell list that they can use. And so, and also, they've got their Bardic Inspiration to help their allies' skills. Mm-hmm. So overall, I think bards are probably the best skill character in the game just because of this. Rogues are going to be up there too, but bards are just fantastic at skill checks. So, complexity. This is a rating that I give based on the difficulty it is to play the class. A 5-star is going to be very hard, and a 1-star is going to be very easy. Our previous two, the Artificer, that was a 5-star, and the Barbarian was a 1-star. So the Bard, I give them a 4-star complexity rating. This means that the class is pretty darn complex, and it takes a lot of game knowledge to potentially get the most out of it. Potentially with your spell selections and your magical secret selections, knowing when to use Bardic Inspiration and how that works, and as well as keeping yourself safe on the battlefield because your defense is so poor, and knowing what to do on your turn because your offense and damage dealing, again, is not very good, at least with the core class. So Bard is not necessarily the most beginner-friendly, and I would say it's relatively complex as it requires knowledge of game mechanics and the Bard spell list, as well as potentially all the classes' spell lists as you get to higher levels in order to play effectively. Thanks for watching. This was my class overview on the Bard. Is there anything I missed? Have you played a Bard, and do you enjoy it? What are some of your favorite things about it? Do you agree with what I said on my ratings and that kind of thing? Our next subclass review is going to be on Cleric, and I'm really excited for that one. Again, my name is Nathan, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.